So to start with, we have the setup of the Drupal already, and you can see that in another video that you can find the link for in the description. So we already set up the Drupal for this purpose. And if I change to Titanium and I go into my app that I'm using, just to show you, my TI app is using the 5.2.0 version of Titanium SDK. I'm not doing anything specifically here. I'm making it to work on Android and iPhone. I haven't tested it on both. The last test I did was on an Android, and the start of it I created it for iPhone just to make sure that I didn't do anything wrong. But keep in mind that I have only tested it on Android at the moment. If I open my app, of course we do have the Mvc structure, model view controllers. Let's start out look at the views. I of course always go into the index. I don't have anything in my index. It's kind of the hello world, because I wanted to explore a lot of things that I don't want to talk about right now. That's all. So the index is not doing that much. And if we look at the controller behind the index, and kind of the only thing that it does is, well, you go in here and then you open the window too. So it's kind of starting out on how can you open windows, and this is an example of that. So it's not doing that much, so we just carry on to the next one. So window 2. Well, the thing in here is that I want to show you that you can use views and just require them inside the view, the window itself. So the only thing window 2 is doing is actually adding a button called new product, and after that require the product collection. So, and if we look at the controller for that one, well, of course I do have the functionality of the button, and that's about it. There's nothing in it. So let's start looking at the product collection. So the first thing I want to have focus on is that the product collection is using a collection. So what is a collection? Well, a collection is a collection of data, and we get that from the model that is in here. And of course we create a view. I bind the data in the table view with the product collection, and in that way I hereafter just need to write where do I want which data, and that's all. So in here I have a product ID which I collect from my collection, and the node ID is called node ID, so that's kind of obvious. The image is going to be product image, and the node title, and the product price, and so forth. So if I look at the product collection model, because that's going to be really important here, the product collection model is created just by going to new and then the model. And if you do this, you will create a standard model containing almost the same as I got here. The only thing that differs from this one is that I'm using an adapter called REST API. So in the description of this video there will be a link for this one, and it is placed under assets, alloy, synchronization, and here it is, the original file by Mads Møller from NAP APS, which you should take a look at him if you want to know even more about this, I'm just using his code. I haven't changed anything in here, not at all. I have looked at it in debugging, but this you just keep as it is. So let's go back to the product collection. First of all, I have a URL, and that URL is pointing at, well, I don't need the JSON part anymore because I changed my Drupal to use JSON by default. So what I want is exactly this one. Not that it changed that much in the view part, but the URL for my data feed, that's one. I want to debug at the current moment, and I'm using the sync, my sync adapter is going to be REST API JS that I mentioned before, which I can close now. The collection name is going to be product collection, and the ID attribute. Now, the ID attribute is very, very important, and it needs to be a field that is in your data feed. So if we go back to our data feed and we look at the product one, I need to have something that identifies each element in here, each object. And of course, the node ID from Drupal is obvious to use for this point, but you need to have it in your view. If you don't have this, you can't really identify the model that you're using and that we are going to use later on. So the ID attribute is node ID. The headers I set to accept application JSON, but that's perfectly fine. So that's about it. So the product collection gets the collection from the product collection in models. Okay, and it gets all the data. And if we look in this one, now I want to look at the controller of the product collection. So if we look at this one, you actually can, you can do fetch in more than one way. So if you can just do a fetch and it will be exactly as the data is, or you can actually, or you have the possibility to change the data if you, for example, need to add two fields together, or you need some prefix or anything that you want. So the product ID I at this moment called it as a CID, which is an auto-generated ID, content ID from Alloy. And the description, I want to call it description because it is, but in the data from the Drupal, it is a body. So you can change it in here. It's not that I use it that much, but I want to show you anyway. So this is the only thing that is connected to the collection. This part down here is a click function to the product table view, because I want to be able to click on the elements in my table view, or I want to click on a row, and then I want to show the detailed view. And the detailed view, I'm going to talk about that in another video. If we just look at this one again, you can see the table view row is here, and it's going to show a image, small image with a height of 75, a layout, which is a view with a layout called done in vertical, so we can have the title and under that the price, which was a request from one of my students. And then we do have a label at the current moment, not something that we need for real life, so I can kind of see the NID right away. But that's it. Let's go back. What are we doing when we want to click one of the rows in my table? Well, the first thing is that I want to create a model that I need to use for later on. The model is a Alloy collection, product collection, get by CID. And I'm doing this now because it's a way to show you that it is quite possible to do it. And sometimes you don't have the ID that is correct, and then you can use the CID because that's always going to be there. And the CID, which I placed in the product ID up here, you can find inside the event, you can find the row data and then the product ID attribute on that one. So you know exactly which one it is. And exactly that element I want to send to my detail view so we can look at only that element. So to do that, I want to first of all create a controller with the detail view, and then I'm going to add my model to that. So when you create a controller, you can actually add a model. And that model contains, as I just said before, the one single element that you clicked on, or in this case, the table row with the content from the view, because this is the view from Drupal, the Drupal view called product 2. One of those objects in the product 2 view from Drupal is the one that is going to be displayed on the detail view. And of course, we want to open it, but we want to make it a model window. And a modal window is because we want to make it disappear when we are not using it anymore. To see the results from what we have done until now, I want to show you this. And as you can see, all my products is in here, and some of my students has also used it. So there might be some funny things in there. And if I click on something, I will know which one I'm doing. We haven't created the detail view yet, but if I click on one, it's gonna look like this. So the next step is creating the detail view. So let's look at that one. So we already called the detail view here with the model as a parameter for when we created it. So when we go to the detail view, first of all, I want to show you this is what we want as it is right now. There's no graphics here, so don't complain about it. There's no designing or anything on this page. It's just functionality that I'm explaining. But if you can do this, you can also make it really nice, the design. Okay, so what we want here is the back button, an update button, and a delete button. And then we want to show the description of the product and an image of the product, if there is any. First of all, if there's a very long description, we want to make sure that you can scroll, and we use that scroll view to do that. And we use an image view to create the image, a label for the description, and 3 buttons. So that's fine. There's 2 things here. Because of the functionalities that we need in here, which is CRUD functionalities like update and delete, we need to have access to the Drupal part where I can use those CRUD functionalities. And the view is not enough. So first of all, I create a model, and in that model, which I call product, when I show you the controller, I load all the data from the model that I got from the previous page from the product collection. When I click the product, I load that into this model so I can use it afterwards and get all the information. So I want to show you the controller first for the product detail. And what we have in here is that all arguments I'm going to place in a variable args, and then I create, well, it's not a well-named collection, I can see that, and I need to clean it up. But you're going to get the idea of it. I would recommend that you make much better name than I have done, but I've tried to test it out a bit. As I said, we need to connect to another collection which contains the product node. And right away, I want to show you that product collection. The product node looks very much like the other one. The only thing is that I have created a link, another link, which is pointing on node. And again, I still use debug. And the ID attribute is still going to be NID. And it is extremely important here that it is NID. We're going to use it in just a minute. If you get an error saying that missing model ID, it's because you have some errors in this one, or you don't actually have the NID in the object that you're working with. So that was kind of my experience with it. So let's go back. Collection is going to be fetch. I'm not going to change anything or do anything funny that I did in the product collection. I'm just going to fetch all of it. Then I have a variable called product to delete, which was kind of the first thing that I worked on. And it takes all the arguments, so I could just have used this one instead, but never mind. For the one that I talked about here, the model, I go out and set the arguments attribute to, so the product contains this, so I can use them afterwards to display data. This part, I'm just going to skip it for a while. It's an utility that I made for caching images on the phone, but it's not really important in this one. But you can look at it yourself. It's not something I made, it's something I got when I can't even remember where, but you can probably search it out. I have a functionality go to update, and let's look at this one. So if you click the update button, you will go to update, and the update is sending, passing you on to a window where I actually also create objects. I use the same window for that. There's just, if it's loaded with an ID, then of course I'm about to update one, and if it's not, to create a new one. So I just open a window and then I close this one. So close window is down here. It's just closing the window. This one is just adding a event listener click on the close window. So this one is kind of funny because if you click anywhere else but the buttons, you will close the window. Kind of a shortcut to just closing it. And this is the set image where I use the thing that I mentioned before. I did get some kind of lacking when I did this, so I'm doing that with a delay of 200 milliseconds, but that's fine. The deleting product, the code for the deleting product is actually placed in here. So the thing is that I can't delete it with the collection that I got from the product collection. The product collection was based on a view, and I can't delete any nodes in a view. I have to contact the product node, and that is also why I have this part included. So when we go down here, I do have some debugging here, and then I want to know, actually I want to know exactly which product is clicked. But I already know that, but which product is clicked in the node collection and not in the other one. So I go in and look for the NID in the Drupal product 2 view collection. So that's a product collection. As you can see here, this is the product node collection. And I go in and then I get it from the NID that I already know, because that was kind of one of the parameters that was sent into the product detail. So when I know that one, I want to make sure that the NID is in place. So I set the NID in there, and then I actually destroy it. Now, when I did this, it perfectly deleted it, but it actually got the list exactly the same way as it was before. The product collection was generated by another collection than the one that I just deleted one from. So the product to delete, which I identify up here, I'm also destroying that, even though I know that it's going to generate an error down here because the view is not supporting the delete functionality. But it updates my list right away, and then I'm ready to close the window. I know this is not the way to do it. I have to work a bit more to find out and then kind of clean it up and make it much better. But there's still work to do, and if anyone has any suggestions, please let me know, because I really want to do it. So that is delete product. In the next video, I will look at updating a product.